is still out there.
The
So what are we
ERC.
gonna talk about for ERC? You're coming out of tax season. Uh,
You went
I
into
mean,
season
we're not
with
gonna know the answer to this, but I wonder how many of you out there had to amend tax returns to claim an ERC credit for a claim that was paid. Interesting to know that. We won't know that. But what else has happened? Where do we stand with that? Because it's kind of a
well,
moving target still.
yeah. Well, you went into tax season with a moratorium, and it's still there.
Still there.
It is, they have not, there's no end in sight, so to say. The IRS is slowly starting to process the ERC claims that were kind of sitting in the warehouse, right? Extremely slow processing times. More likely than not that you'll get requests for additional documentation, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Much slower processing times. Again, if you have a client that got the ERC and didn't qualify, there is still an incentive, even though the voluntary program has ended. There's still an incentive to pay it back in full, with a waiver of penalties and interest. The mills are still out there. It's not like you can't get this still. In fact, I think the number is 25,000 a week, new claims coming into the IRS. Is that right?
Yeah, 20 to 25,000 coming in
Yep.
every week.
And so it's, mills are still out there. So there's still, the potential that your client might be, approached, to consider whether they qualify. So it's not a lot of progress. I'm kind of stuck on, right now you better have good records.
Yeah.
I really, really hope that if you qualified for the ERC or if you went to the mill, I hope that you got the calculations, the spreadsheets, how did you qualify? Why did you qualify? How many employees qualified? What employees didn't qualify? Because, under audit, they're going to ask for a lot of information.
Yeah, and we were asked to look over that form. I don't know if it's public, so I'm not gonna give you,
Oh,
but it
okay.
was basically the information request form for an ERC claim. I don't know if they're sending it to everybody or select ones, but I can tell you the amount of information that if you get one of these document request forms, um, you better have kept good records. I can tell you this, if they went to a mill, they're not gonna have anything close to what they need.
Well, it's 4 pages
Yeah.
of things that say you need to either answer the question, attach copies, and it includes everything from a list of employees, who'd you pay, what'd you pay, when did you pay, were they also listed on the PPP, copies of tax returns, amended tax returns, employment tax returns, W-2s. They're asking for a lot of information.
Copies of government orders,
Government orders, yep.
and
Copies that your business truly did qualify, and they're saying, like, having board meetings and meeting notes and emails to employees, letters to customers or your clients, your vendors, notifying them of, that they can't perform their business procedures due to COVID. So it's been pretty intense, pretty
yeah,
intense.
and we don't know how often it'll be used. I mean, you mentioned they're slowly processing
Yeah.
claims. I think one of the reasons they're slowly processing claims, there's a waiting to get this process in place so that
Mhm.
particularly for larger claims, they're not just gonna in the beginning, and this is again, we gotta remember this started in the middle of a pandemic. In the beginning, the whole idea was get the form in, get it processed, get the money out.
Yeah, save the
And
business,
then
get the money in their hands so that they
get
can
the
keep
money
the doors
out, get
open.
them through the pandemic.
Yep.
Then what we all saw was the fraudsters jumped in, and the amount of money going out was way in excess of what people were eligible. So we've seen a reverse now that instead of rushing to get it out, we're slowing down getting it out, and we're gonna ask for more information. I think this is public, but we're not gonna make it available until we're sure that it is. But the amount of information now, if you did it properly, you did the ERC claim, you did the 941Xs, and you followed the laws and followed the rules, you probably should have everything they asked for. Maybe you need to go get a copy of a government order. You just knew it was there. You didn't bother to get a copy of it, something like
Yeah.
that. But other
But
than
the
that,
calculations and the supporting documentation and the employee list and all that kind of stuff, PPP, loan information, that you should have.
yeah, again, the government order you may have to chase down. Again, I'm not saying you have to do this for free, because this is gonna be kinda like, if you got a client get an audit
Mhm.
for their tax return, you wouldn't represent them for free. So this is sort of the same thing, but it's a pre-refund. They're trying to catch the money before it goes
Goes
out. They're
out.
sending it out and try to go get it back. So, uh, they're serious about catching the fraudsters. They've caught some. They're trying to catch more.
Yeah, what have you heard? What have you heard? I feel like you have some good stats on
Well, they've sent some people to some mill people to jail for a couple of years. Criminal investigations got, I think, 400 cases. The problem with, and I don't mean to sound negative, but to take somebody to court for something doesn't go quickly. You know,
no.
they've got rights and they get lawyers. So I mean, you'd like to think they could just go around and say, well, they're crooks, they're crooks, they're crooks, stop them, put them out of business, things
Yeah,
like that. It takes a while.
yeah.
So that's why they're trying to slow it down, but the amount of fraud is astronomical. And I, the IRS has said that they think of those, you mentioned the claims still coming in, that they
Mhm.
think 95% of them are fraudulent. Yeah,
It's crazy.
that's probably a little high, but I don't know how high it is. And this commissioner particularly is serious about trying to stop the amount of fraud, because we're going to look back on this sometime in the not too distant future and realize exactly
How
what a big,
disastrous.
yeah, how much fraudulent money went out that we'll never ever get back. And kind of insult to injury. We had the withdrawal program, we had the voluntary disclosure where you paid 80% back, and the 80% was to compensate for the fees the mill charged. And I heard situations where the business went back to the mill and said, I want to withdraw the claim, or I want to take advantage of the 80% payback, and they were asked to pay almost the same fee
Yes, I know.
to do that as to get them the money they weren't entitled to before. So
That's
it's not going away, I'm sure. Not just because Annie's back. We'll talk about it again in the future.